Generation with
a
Nothing to
generation of young
Lose by, sorry for starting previously, by Fee Harrington. Yeah, let's watch
English
it.
men decided they had nothing left to lose. The Black Death had killed a third of England's population 40 years earlier. Labour was scarce. Workers had leverage they had never had before. And the ruling class responded by passing the Statute of Labourers, legislation that legally capped wages, prevented workers from moving to better opportunities, and attempted to freeze the feudal order in place by force of law. Then came the poll tax. A flat rate per head demanded from every adult regardless of what they owned or earned, the poorest paying the same as the richest. Wat Tyler led what followed. The Peasants' Revolt of 1381. Young men who had done everything the system asked, worked the land, paid the taxes, fought the wars, and found that the system had no intention of keeping its side of the bargain. They marched on London. They burned the Savoy Palace. They stormed the Tower. King Richard II, who was 14 years old, rode out to meet them at Smithfield and promised everything they demanded. Serfdom abolished, fixed rents, free trading. The moment Richard's men killed Wat Tyler at the meeting, the promises evaporated. The revolt was crushed, the leaders were executed. But something had changed, not immediately.
It always happened, right?
Over the following century, serfdom did
Didn't this happen, something similar to that happen with Venezuela as well?
disappear from England. The specific energy of men.
They promised it like to the people that they would do like a lot of amazing stuff, and then like they reached the power and they just like they literally just became something even worse than the current thing that they dethroned.
Men who had nothing to lose, directed at a system that had broken its contract with them, produced a consequence that outlasted the suppression of the revolt itself. History is full of this. The specific pattern of young men excluded from the legitimate pathways of their society, deciding the contract is.
They savor the power, they get intoxicated with it, and they just forget actually what led them to there, what were the purpose to begin with. It's just people weak-minded and with very like corrupted souls.
Broken, and the energy that produces going somewhere. Sometimes somewhere constructive, sometimes somewhere that terrifies the people who created the conditions for it in the first place. We are building those conditions again, right now. And the question nobody in mainstream politics is seriously asking is where this energy goes. Because here is the honest state of play for young men in Britain and America in 2026. 1 in 3 American men are no longer in the workforce, not unemployed in the technical sense, just gone. Not working, not looking, out. 66% of Americans.
I risk saying that this is probably bigger in my country. I risk saying that here it's probably 2 out of 3. I risk saying
American
that.
men aged 20 and over were employed or actively seeking a job as of April 2026, according to the US Bureau of Labor Statistics, down from 73% in 2006, a nearly 20-year low. And the trend is still pointing downward. Male employment dropped a full point year over year from 2025. The only period with lower participation was the 2020 pandemic when it collapsed to 59%.
But I don't know about my president.
This is a peacetime record. Nearly 1 million young British people between 16 and 24 are not in education, employment or training. Almost 600,000 of them are not actively looking for a job, not because they are lazy, because they have tried and stopped, because the specific calculation they have run, effort invested versus realistic return, has come back negative enough times that the rational response is to stop making the investment. 1 in 5 men under 25 globally are unemployed and not searching for work. Computer programmer employment in America has dropped to its lowest level since 1980. Men with a college degree now have roughly the same unemployment rate as men who never went to college. The degree that was supposed to be the passport has stopped opening doors. And the question underneath all of this is the one that the data alone cannot answer, but that everyone can feel. Why should they try? What do they get in return? Think about what
everything that was promised to young men was taken. Not just young men, like the young woman as well. But I mean, we all know like that things are way heavier to the man's side, you know, because also society expects them to provide, to work, to provide, and to construct and solve things in society, way more than actually from the woman. So obviously, this is heavier on them, Uh, and like society promised all these things to them, and like they study, they work, they do everything that they were told that they had to. He studied all these many years inside school, and then after that, they have nothing. They barely got a job. When they get, they are terribly badly paid. If you guys think that this situation is horrible in US, you should see my country how it is, because at least in US with a very basically like average income of I don't know, of a McDonald's worker that just put the fries on the bag. It's like with the 1 or 2% of people actually getting my country. So you guys are still far better than my situation here. But I obviously I understand that things have been getting worse in US as well for a long time, and it's a lot worse in Europe, by the way. But yeah, it's getting worse everywhere, I guess. But you look at all of this, like and like the younger ones, they look at all of this and they think, why will I move anything at all? Why will I try to make something if nothing seems worth anymore? I will not own a house. I will not like, even for me, like I will not own a good wife. And I still risk like getting a bad one and losing even more resources, and a lot of stuff like that. And you just feel like not moving at all. You just feel like, oh, it's better I just lay down here and like play video games and watch TV or whatever it is, while my parents can afford that. Or then I will get just this very basic job that I have here that I don't need to work a fixed amount of time, and I will just work the bare minimum so I can just pay my very basic like bills and stay rotting inside my house, like see life going through because I didn't even ask it to be born to begin with. And you're seeing like more and more people think like that, and that's really crazy. And also like this is one of the reasons of why Japan has that high amount of self-unalivements there, because all that shit started there first. Like it started there first, for different reasons, actually. Like they also have a high amount of society pressure there. Obviously, we can't compare like Japan in United States only that sense. But what I'm saying is that it really seems that everything that we are expecting and we're gonna see in the world happens first in Japan, that actually even in US to begin with. So Japan is like a mirror, a magical mirror to the future, So I look at Japan like in the same way that I look comparing like Venezuela to my country. I think Japan is like the Venezuela of United States. Like you look from United States, you look to Japan and you see what will happen in the future with your country, by looking at Japan. And you can see that by the reproduction rate in Japan, that is very low. So this is what is awaiting for you guys in United States as well. And also the other many problems, the economic problems and things that, economy wasn't a problem to Japan, but now it's becoming. And also the industry being more and more dominated by the economy, actually being more and more embraced by sex workers. Like what's moving Japan the most now probably is the I don't know, okay, but I bet that is, if not the first, probably is the second topic. The second like biggest economic factor in Japan is the sex industry. Is the sexual industry in Japan, probably, prostitution. And probably, again, it's the same that it's awaiting US in the future as well. So I really see like Japan as a mirror of the future of United States. Everything that's going wrong and worse now in Japan is literally how US is gonna become. Yeah. Obviously, they have their differences, but I think you can really predict a lot of stuff that will happen in US looking to Japan. I might be saying something wrong. I mean, I know nothing, okay, guys, so don't take that much serious. But maybe this perspective that I'm bringing you to, guys, at the very least, will open you guys' eyes to that, and you guys may see something that you wasn't seeing before. And by that alone, I think I did something great already. Yeah, let's keep watching.
What participating in the system is supposed to offer. You work hard at school, you go to university, 6 years serious debt, you apply for jobs, you build a career, you contribute, you pay your taxes, you follow the rules, and what you are supposed to get in return is stability. A career that rewards your investment, the ability to afford housing, the ability to form a family, a stake in the society you are contributing to. The sense that the system recognises your effort and returns something proportionate to it. Now look at what the system is actually delivering. Housing costs that put ownership out of reach for most young men in their 20s and 30s. A labour market that has been restructured around sectors where men are a minority, and where the roles that previously rewarded male skill sets have been automated, outsourced, or filled by cheaper imported labour. An educational system whose credentials have been so rapidly diluted that they no longer confer the advantage they were sold as conferring. A tax burden that takes a significant portion of income earned and returns it in the form of services that disproportionately benefit other demographics. And a cultural and media environment that consistently communicates that the problems of young men are either their own fault or less important than the problems of other groups. You put that calculation to a generation of intelligent young men, and enough of them run the numbers and reach the same conclusion. The return on participation is not there. The contract has been broken. And if the contract is broken, why keep paying into it?
True.
I had a conversation recently with a friend I had not seen in almost 2 years. Master's degree in cybersecurity. 8 months of job searching. Getting shut down everywhere he applies. Looking at the roles and seeing cheap foreign labour recruited at a fraction of what he would cost. Seeing DEI hiring boxes being ticked that he cannot tick. 6 years of university, real debt, and the market that was supposed to reward it.
Many times cannot even tick just because the color of his skin. That's real crazy.
Has completely changed the rules without telling him. He is not bitter. He is just doing the maths. And the maths is not working out. He is not the only person I know like this. He is not even close to the only person I know like this. And he is one of the most capable people I know.
Looking good.
Which means the millions of young men who are less equipped, less resilient, less able to absorb the gap between what they were promised and what they found are in a significantly worse position than him. Those men exist. They are the 600,000 in Britain not even looking anymore. They are the ones who filled in the applications and heard nothing back. Who got the rejections, who watched the role go to someone else for reasons they were never given, who did the thing you were supposed to do and found it did not produce the thing it was supposed to produce. And at some point, a man in that position stops doing the thing. Not dramatically, not with a statement. He just stops, he withdraws, he plays the video game instead of sending another application. He watches the stream instead of going to the networking event. He opts out of the competition because the competition has demonstrated it is not designed for him to win.
It's an economic problem as well. It's not just lack of motivation or lack of feeling, like he has an obligation to be part of society, because clearly our society betrayed them. They don't feel like that anymore. But also, like, it's financial problem. Like, it's expensive for you to keep going all these places. You waste a lot of money. It's better you just stay at home and do that through internet.
80% of Gen Z felt lonely in the past year. People aged 15 to 24 now spend 70% less time with friends in person than their counterparts did in 2003. The generation that can reach anyone on Earth with a tap is the loneliest generation ever recorded.
Dark Hawk 317, the TI is only the forefront for what they are actually doing. Outsourcing the jobs to cheaper labor forces, both present and overseas, all for the sake of appeasing the shareholders. Yes. And obviously, like these shareholders, and this is where a lot of people get actually confused. These shareholders, they are not aiming, they are not aiming just like financial income. Most of them are actually like BlackRock, and they just end that evil filthy plans purely, so they are not even aiming to have this money back, because as we've seen with the industry of games and that etc., they don't actually get fucking money back at all. Like they're just aiming their filthy agenda, their filthy meta, and they don't actually care about spending money on that. So no, I don't believe that it's even the shareholders, in the sense like, oh, they are doing this so they can give more money to shareholders, because obviously everything that they are doing is actually not bringing this money back to the shareholders. They are just throwing their money away as well, but the difference is that they have endless money to throw away. That's the difference. And they know that, and that's why they are doing this. They are putting a lot of effort in destroy our society. And it's more about that actually, the income that they will acquire out of it.
Because the technology produced the appearance of connection.
And proceeds saying the problem has never been capitalism. Capitalism is an economic system. The problem has always been the government, crony capitalism, cooperativism, etc. Yes, the problem is the oligarchy, is how the biggest players around, the Jews, the billionaires, how they aligned with the government, how they made this filthy like devil's work pact with each other to literally eliminate all the concurrency, like all the ones that could actually become a threat to them and stay in power forever. That's not even capitalism. This is meta capitalism at the very least, because no one can, at least up until what I know, could think in a worse name to that explains better. So no, I don't blame capitalism for that, because capitalism isn't actually the current like economic system that we live in, and people don't seem to realize that. We don't live in a capitalist society anymore. Like, I don't think we ever live it to begin with yet. The concept is there, but it's not. I know I'm sounding like communists saying that the real communists didn't exist yet, right? I know it sounds like that. I know, but think, guys. We are not having the free markets anymore. The free markets is the pinnacle, is one of the main principles of the capitalism. We don't have free market. Just think and look very well to what we have in society right now. We don't have free markets because of the oligarchy of the billionaires. They are fucking controlling the prices of the RAM memory and the microchips and everything. This explains you pretty much that we don't live in a capitalist society. This tells you everything you need to know.
Without the substance of it. And the substance, actual community, actual belonging, an actual stake in something shared, is what people need and what the current system is not providing. Now, the historical sweep. Because the specific combination we are describing, young men excluded from legitimate economic participation, cultural messaging that their struggles are either their fault or irrelevant, blocked pathways to status and belonging, critical mass, has appeared before. Multiple times, with very consistent results. Weimar Germany, the late 1920s into the early 1930s. Germany had lost the First World War. The Versailles Treaty had imposed reparations equivalent to $442 billion in current money.
Thank you.
Hyperinflation in 1923 had wiped out the savings of the middle class virtually overnight. The Great Depression hit in 1929 and pushed unemployment to 33%. An entire generation of young German men who had been told the system would reward them had arrived at the system, and found it had nothing for them. Hitler did not come to power primarily on the support of the already desperate. He came to power on the support of the formerly comfortable, the people who had grown up with reasonable expectations of economic security.
Darkhawk, I will tell about something that I shouldn't be talking about actually. But given that we speak English here and we barely talk about my country, I think I can explain briefly to you an example of why it isn't the government that has power over the billionaires, but the contrary. For example, I don't know if you guys heard of the scandal of the master bank in my country. In this scandal, it's proved that all the politicians from left and right side, right wing, like, are involved with the corruption, the systemic corruption with the banks and everything, and they were like all being bought. Their votes inside there, their interests were being bought by this master bank guy, the Vocaro. The name of the guy is Vocaro, you know. And even the ministers of the Supreme Court, the ones that you know very well, even I will not mention that one. Yeah. You guys know very well. There is one that's even involved with the United States in a process with Rumble and all. Yeah, not gonna mention the name, right? So, even these guys were involved with the corruption of the massive bank, and this guy Vocaro, he was buying literally everyone, the ministers of Supreme Courts, the deputies, the senates, the everyone was be bought by him alone, like literally. So do you really think that the same isn't happening in US right now? Do you really think that? I'll just let that in the air. I will not discuss much, but more like, cause I really afraid to touch that stuff, but it's just an example so you guys understand why the billionaires are actually the ones controlling things and not the government.
Who had built their identities around those expectations, who experienced the destruction of those expectations not as bad luck, but as systemic betrayal. The historians who have studied this most carefully describe the most dangerous political moment not as when the poorest are suffering, but when the people who believe the system would work for them discover that it will not. One historian put it precisely: the populations that respond most dangerously to a decade of declining living standards are not the chronically poor, who have developed adaptive strategies, but the formerly comfortable middle class, people who had internalized a reasonable expectation of economic security and stability, whose economic identities were built on that expectation, and who experience its erosion as personal failure and systemic betrayal simultaneously. A college-educated Gen Z man who followed the rules, got the degree, applied for the jobs, and found the market had been restructured around him is experiencing exactly that: personal failure and systemic betrayal simultaneously. The system told him what to do to succeed, he did it, and the system lied. Nobody in the late 1920s in Germany could have predicted what the character of the nation would be in the mid-1930s, only 6 years later. That is how fast it moves when the conditions are right. 6 years from a frustrated but functioning democracy to something that shocked the world. What are the conditions? Economic exclusion of a generation of young men, cultural messaging that tells those young men their struggles are either their fault or irrelevant, blocked legitimate pathways to status, family, meaning, and critical mass, enough young men in that position simultaneously that the energy has nowhere to go except somewhere. We are building those conditions in Britain and America right now, not identically to 1930s Germany. The specifics are different, but the mechanism, young men with nothing to lose reaching critical mass, is the same. And the question that nobody in mainstream politics or media is seriously asking is, where does it go? The Rome parallel is instructive. The late Roman Republic produced exactly this dynamic at scale. The concentration of land ownership in the hands of the wealthy had dispossessed the Roman smallholders. The farmers who had historically been the backbone of both the Roman economy and the Roman army. These men flooded into Rome, dependent on grain doles with no economic stake in the existing system. The Gracchi brothers, Tiberius and Gaius, tried to reform the land distribution and were both murdered by the Senate. The Senate chose to protect its economic interests over addressing the conditions that were destroying the Republic.
Oh, don't tell me. What it
followed
looks like,
was
right?
Caesar. Not immediately. Through a generation of escalating political violence, military adventurism, and the gradual erosion of the republican norms that had kept the system stable, The dispossessed men with nothing to lose did not produce the fall of the Republic directly. They produced the political conditions in which a man willing to offer them recognition and purpose could bypass the existing institutional constraints. Caesar understood something the Senate did not. The men who had been excluded from the system were not going to quietly accept their exclusion. They were a resource. They were energy. The question was only who was going to direct it. The French Revolution is the same mechanism.
I think exactly the same at that point. I think like we will reach a point that even with all the soy that they injected into men to be passive for all this long, no soy will be enough. We will reach a point there where no soy will be enough for men to stay passive and not do something about what's going on right now.
Not caused by the poorest people in France.
But what I fear though is what's gonna be the outcome of this. I think when the moment comes, I don't think men will actually become victorious on that. And if they do, what will be the leftover of all of this? We will actually win in the end. What's gonna come after? You know, you will win, and then what? What you replace that for? I said that many times to you guys here. Okay, you do a civil war. You know, a lot of blood and everything against your government and blah blah blah. You win. Let's suppose you win. What the fuck you gonna do next? You replace for the same again? Like they did, for example, in Nepal? And even let a woman assume the control of the country? Which never ends well, and people don't seem to realize that as well?
Caused by the people who had enough education to understand they were being excluded from a system that claimed to serve them, young men who had been told that talent and effort would be rewarded in a society that was actually structured to serve inherited privilege. The combination of education, aspiration, and blocked opportunity. That combination is extraordinarily combustible. It was in 1789, it is now. Nietzsche saw this coming in a different form. He wrote about the last men.
Japan is another example. A prime minister woman. Everyone was saying, oh, Iron Fist, blah, 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 bullshit. I told you that it was a bad idea, and everyone is seeing that right now. It is always a bad idea to put a woman in power.
Men, a society of people who have given up on ambition and greatness, who have invented happiness, who blink complacently at the world and ask what is love, what is creation, what is longing, what is a star. The specific description of a generation that has been told to want less, that has been managed into contentment with diminishing returns, that has substituted the small pleasure for the large purpose. But Nietzsche also wrote about what happens when the last men become the men with nothing to lose, when the managed contentment stops working because the management has failed, when the small pleasures are no longer available because the economy has removed them, when the digital distraction stops filling the gap because the gap has become too large. The energy that had been managed into passivity has to go somewhere. It does not dissipate, it redirects. The specific question for 2026 is where it redirects. And that depends entirely on what legitimate pathways remain available and what voices are speaking to the young men who are standing outside the system looking in. The Gracchi offered land reform. Caesar offered military glory and political representation. The French revolutionaries offered liberty and the destruction of the old order. Hitler offered national pride and the identification of enemies responsible for the humiliation. What these all have in common is that they were speaking to young men who had been excluded from legitimate participation in the system, and offering them something, anything, that acknowledged their existence and their frustration. The British and American political classes are currently offering Gen Z men roughly nothing that speaks to their specific situation. The mainstream left tells them their problems are less important than the problems of other groups and that their identity is suspect. The mainstream right tells them to work harder and stop complaining. Neither is listening, neither is offering anything that corresponds to the actual experience of a young man who got the degree and did the job search and found the market had moved. That vacuum does not
That's so true.
stay empty, it fills. And the question of what it fills with is the most important political question of the next decade. This is where we are. The data says so.
We just forgot to mention that the majority of Gen Z was actually aborted. So you don't have enough people even for a
The
revolution.
history says so. And nobody in charge seems to be paying attention. Let me go deeper into the Weimar parallel, because it is more precise than most people realize and the precision matters. Weimar Germany had a 33% unemployment rate at its peak in 1932. The reparations had stripped the country's wealth. The hyperinflation of 1923 had destroyed the savings of the middle class in months. A generation of young German men who had fought in the First World War came home to find there was nothing for them. No jobs, no prospects, no recognition of what they had sacrificed. The republic that had replaced the Kaiser was associated in the minds of many with the humiliation of Versailles and the economic catastrophe that followed. Hitler did not win his initial support from the permanently poor. He won it from the formerly comfortable, from the young men who had been promised a place in a functioning society and found the promise had been broken, from the veterans who had fought for a country that subsequently had no use for them, from the students who had educated themselves for roles that no longer existed. The specific combination, education, aspiration, and blocked opportunity produced an energy that the Nazi Party was uniquely positioned to channel. Historian Richard Evans described the Nazi voter as disproportionately young, male, Protestant, and from the middle class rather than the working class. Not the chronically desperate, the newly desperate. The people who had internalized a reasonable expectation of their place in society and found that expectation systematically violated. That is the precise profile of a significant portion of Gen Z men in Britain and America in 2026. Young, male, educated, had internalized a reasonable expectation, get the degree, work hard, participate, and found the expectation violated by a labour market that has restructured around them, a housing market that has priced them out, and a cultural environment that responds to their frustration by suggesting it is their own fault. Now here is the thing that historians who study Weimar always say, and that nobody in the current political conversation seems to be listening to. The danger is not the people who are already angry. The danger is the window between when the conditions are created and when the energy finds a direction. In that window, the direction is still undetermined. The specific form that the anger takes depends on what voices are speaking to it, and what frameworks are being offered for understanding it. In Weimar, the voice that found the dislocated young men most effectively was the worst possible voice. That is not inevitable. It was not inevitable in Weimar either. It became inevitable because the institutions that should have been offering honest diagnoses and legitimate pathways chose instead to dismiss the anger
It will
as
happen again
illegitimate
then.
and the people
Because no
experiencing
one
it
is
as morally
listening then.
deficient. Sound familiar? Tocqueville saw this coming in a different form and from a different angle. Writing in the 1840s, the French political philosopher described what he called soft despotism, the specific danger of democratic societies. Not tyranny from above in the classical sense. Something more subtle. A government that keeps its citizens comfortable enough to prevent revolt, but not engaged enough to produce genuine citizenship. That reduces its subjects gradually, he wrote, to being nothing.
I wonder what will be this time that will gather this man attention. You know, what will be what they will promise this time to man?
More than a flock of timid and industrious
What will be a house? A woman that will actually be submissive to them?
animals, of which government is the shepherd. The specific mechanism Tocqueville described is this: the democratic government provides just enough material comfort to prevent the kind of desperate revolt that visible oppression produces, but in doing so, it
Fox is for
infantilizes
all.
the population, it makes them dependent. It removes from them the necessity of exercising the capacities, judgment, courage, self-reliance, civic participation, that produce genuine adults rather than permanent dependents. The population becomes easier to manage. And easier to manage means less free, less capable, and less able to defend itself when the management fails. The young men checking out of the labour market and the civic life of Britain and America in 2026 are not choosing this. They are being produced by it. The specific combination of economic exclusion, cultural dismissal, and the managed distraction of the digital attention economy is producing exactly the population Tocqueville described. Not revolting, not organising, just withdrawing into the screens, into the games, into the passivity that the system finds easiest to manage, and that is, in the long run, the most dangerous outcome of all. Because passive populations do not stay passive forever. They stay passive until the management fails. Until the material comfort that substitutes for genuine engagement is withdrawn by economic collapse or institutional failure or the simple running out of road. And then the energy that has been managed into passivity has to go somewhere. and it goes there without the habits of civic engagement, democratic participation, and constructive problem-solving that a healthy society produces in its young men. Camus wrote about absurdity, the specific condition of a person who confronts a world that refuses to make sense on his terms, who has been brought up to believe that effort produces result, that the contract between action and consequence is real, and who then encounters a reality that violates that contract systematically. The variable ratio reinforcement of the job application process, sometimes you hear back, mostly you do not. There is no discernible logic to which applications succeed, produces exactly the psychological profile that Camus was describing. The world that will not respond rationally to rational action. Camus said the response to absurdity was revolt, not violence, the philosophical refusal to accept the absurd as final, to keep acting in the face of a universe that does not respond. The alternative, what he called suicide, though he meant it philosophically rather than literally, was the abandonment of the project. The decision that the gap between effort and result was so permanent and so fundamental that the effort was not worth making. The 600,000 young British people not even looking for work have made, in Camus' terms, a philosophical decision, not a dramatic one, a quiet one. They have looked at the gap between what the system promised and what it delivers and decided the effort is not worth making, and that decision is entirely rational given the evidence available to them. The irrationality is not in their response, it is in the conditions that produce the response. Now the family formation picture.
Yes,
because this
totally,
connects everything,
totally.
and it is not about dating in the trivial sense, it is about the specific
It's everyone that ignored them and for all this long. That's where they rationalize in on all of this.
biological and social mechanism by
And
which
it's
a
the same
society
what's happening
reproduces
again right
itself
now.
and the specific damage being done to that
I
mechanism.
just say we're going
Only
extinct.
26% of Gen Z adults aged 23 to
We
29
actually
are
don't know
married.
about that.
At the same age, 42% of millennials were married. The median age at first marriage in America hit an all-time high in 2024, 30.2 for men. It is on track to exceed 31 by 2030. Gen Z adults are having sex at roughly half the rate that the same age group had in 1990. These numbers are not primarily about culture or attitude, or the specific choices young people are making about how they want to live. They are primarily about economics. 44% of Gen Z cite financial readiness as the top barrier to marriage, higher than any other generation surveyed. Half of single Americans say they are going on fewer dates because of the cost. Gen Z adults spend an average of $205 per date and go on about 9 dates a year. That is $1,845
So we already had a
per
female
year,
president.
3 to 5%
Oh,
of annual
that's
income for the
rich.
typical young worker, on the basic social activity that produces the relationships that produce the families that produce the next generation. A
Hey man,
generation
it
that
could be
cannot
worse. We
afford to
could be
form
Brazil.
families
Yes.
is a generation
Yes, guys, just think about that. You are not spawned in Brazil. Yeah. No, seriously. Every time you feel bad with the situation in your country, remember that you could have been spawned in Brazil. And if you can't not comprehend how terrible that is, just do some searches on Google or ask an AI, compare stuff to your country with Brazil, and you gotta get happy. You will get happy very, very fast. Because people wanna flee my country and go to United States illegally just to work putting fries in the bag in McDonald's. So you will know how bad things are here.
generation that will not form them, not because they do not want to, because the economic conditions that make it possible have been removed, the housing that would allow a young couple to start a life together, the job security that would allow a man to feel he had something to offer, the cultural framework that would make the investment of commitment feel worthwhile. All of this matters not just at the individual level but at the civilizational level. A society that stops producing children at replacement rate does not continue in its current form. We have talked about the European demographics in another video on this channel. The same trajectory applies in Britain and America. The specific generation that has been excluded from economic participation, from family formation, from genuine civic engagement, that generation is also not having children. And the next generation that does not exist cannot do anything at all. The democratic question, because this is the one that Finn raised and it is the most politically sensitive and the most important. What does democracy actually offer a young man in 2026? The right to vote, for parties none of which are seriously addressing the conditions he is living in. The obligation to pay taxes, into a system that is disproportionately structured around the interests of older property-owning demographics, whose political participation rate is higher and whose interests the system therefore serves more reliably. The theoretical protection of a legal system that arrests people for online posts at 33 per day, while releasing violent offenders early because there is no prison space. The promise of social mobility that has been measured and documented to be lower in Britain in 2026 than it was in 1970. The democratic contract, I participate, I pay in, the system protects my interests and responds to my voice, is only worth maintaining if the contract is being honoured. And the evidence available to a young man looking honestly at the British or American political system in 2026 is that the contract is not being honoured, that the system responds to the interests of those with the most economic and political leverage, that the 600,000 young men not looking for work are not, in any meaningful sense, represented by any major party in Britain or America. The specific danger of this is not revolution. Revolution
I
requires
bet that the things are way
organisation,
worse in
ideology,
Britain, huh?
and the specific belief that seizing the existing system and redirecting it is worth the effort. What is actually more likely and more corrosive
Yeah,
is
Britain's
simply continued
cooked,
withdrawal.
definitely.
The gradual erosion of the civic base that makes democratic governance functional, the continued decline in youth voter turnout, the continued retreat into private life, the screens, the games, the passivity of a generation that has looked at the public sphere and concluded it has nothing for them. Tocqueville's soft despotism does not produce dramatic
Name me a single culture that isn't cooked. Polony.
collapse. It produces gradual decay. The institutions keep functioning after they have stopped working. The
Norwegian.
elections keep happening after they have stopped mattering. The representation keeps being claimed after it has ceased to operate. And the population that has withdrawn
Norwegian
does not
Bonnie.
mostly mount the barricades. It just gradually stops producing the social, economic and civic energy that kept the whole thing going. Now, where this ends. Because that is the question Finn asked at the start, and it is the one this
Singapore,
video
yes.
has been building toward. There are specific historical examples of what happens when you combine economic exclusion of young men with cultural dismissal, blocked legitimate pathways, and critical mass. We have walked through Weimar, Rome, and France in 1789. There is a fourth example that is closer and more instructive: Britain in the 1970s, the specific decade when the post-war settlement ran out of steam and the economy produced mass youth unemployment for the first time since the 1930s. Youth unemployment in Britain in 1981 hit
Darkhawk, Singapore is super expensive. Yes, it's exactly like US to me, super expensive. Oh, Mizuki, why you don't come to US? Because it's super expensive. Yeah, also, like, I cannot get a visa to there, but it's super expensive. I can live there. So you, Singapore to you guys is just like US is to me. You know, literally. You guys can't go there because it's super expensive to you.
20%. Inner city riots in Brixton, Toxteth.
But it doesn't mean that the country is bad. The country is just super expensive to you guys. But to people that live in Singapore, Singapore is a marvelous country.
Handsworth, Chapeltown. Not organised, not ideological. The raw expression of a generation that had been promised a place and found none. The political response to those riots determined the shape of British politics for the next 40 years. Thatcher's government diagnosed the problem as excess welfare dependency and insufficient market discipline.
Yes, because it is. Guess what? It is.
And responded with policies that further concentrated wealth and accelerated deindustrialization. The energy of the 1981 riots was managed, not addressed, managed, into a political and cultural settlement that delivered prosperity for the already prosperous and gradually withdrew the conditions for everyone else. The settlement is still running. It is running out. The boys who rioted in Brixton in 1981 are in their late 50s and 60s now. Their sons and grandsons are the 600,000 not looking for work. The energy did not go away. It accumulated. It is larger now than it was in 1981 because the conditions that produce it are more extensive and more durable, and the institutions that might address them have less credibility and less capacity than they had 40 years ago. What specifically happens when this reaches the point where it can no longer be managed by screens and distraction, and the slow drip of welfare payments just sufficient to prevent overt revolt? That is genuinely uncertain. History offers several possibilities. Some of them are constructive, some of them are catastrophic. The specific outcome depends on what is being built in the space between now and then, what alternative frameworks are being offered, what legitimate pathways remain available, what voices are speaking to the young men who are standing outside the system and deciding whether to direct their energy somewhere or nowhere. The catastrophic outcomes are the ones that happened in 1933 and 1789 and 1381, when the people standing outside the system found the wrong voice first. The constructive outcomes are the ones where the energy of exclusion gets redirected into building something new. The entrepreneur who builds the company that employs the people. The existing system failed. The craftsman who builds the skill base that the economy actually needs, but the credential system never produced. The community that rebuilds the social infrastructure, the shared spaces, the mutual support, the genuine belonging, that the atomization of the last 30 years has destroyed. These are not romantic ideas. They are specific things being done by specific people right now. The young men building independent income through their own skills. The communities forming around shared purpose rather than shared geography. The quiet withdrawal from the managed system not into passivity but into something being built outside it. The question is whether that constructive direction develops fast enough and at large enough scale to absorb the energy before the catastrophic direction gets there first. Nobody in charge is making that a priority. The political class that could be building the pathways is instead arguing about things that do not address the conditions. The cultural class that could be telling an honest story about what is happening to young men is instead telling them that their struggles are either their fault or less important than the struggles of others. 1 in 3 American men are not in the workforce. The trend is still pointing downward. Nobody is paying attention. And history is very clear about what happens next when that changes.
Yeah, I wanna see how long that's gonna take. It seems to be taking a long time. And don't get me wrong, I'm not telling that when it starts happening, it will be pretty as well. But I think any response, it's very, very welcome because I think no one can stand more all this passivity and like they keep doing and pushing whatever they want, however they want, and nothing happens with them, like I don't think it ever will to begin with. Because if we were to revolt to something, we should go against every single one of these fucking little shit billionaires, and just do something. And that's never gonna happen. Never gonna happen. So yeah. But we can dream, right? We can dream. Oh yeah, just want to remind you guys to join our Discord server. You can do that by hopping on the link tree that is on screen right now. You'll find amazing links there, including like my Ko-Fi, Patreon, and also the Kick link that through there you can subscribe on the Kick stream or give it subs or give it kicks as well. Or if you prefer, you can just like become a member of Patreon or buy some of the videos there or the video collection and also sending donations through Ko-Fi as well. What you prefer, just avoid Vtuber at all costs because it sucks like a huge amount of the money, most of the half of the money that you guys send. And I pay taxes 2 times, like not only Vtuber collects 55%, I still pay 30% more to United States and I receive barely nothing from YouTube. So avoid that at all costs, and also YouTube doesn't deserve because it's always shadow banning me. So yeah, let's go to the next one. Before we go any further, I want to take this brief moment here to thank all of you, my patrons, for the incredible support to my work here on YouTube, and especially my 5-tail fox tier member, the Holy Ball, and to all of my 3-tail fox tier members, Wallony Wolf, Fanny Sylvie, Eat Himself, Chile Not Serious, Eustace the Useful, Zealous Isaiah, Ala Rosas, Max Tenor, Nicotino, Avery, Halcyonic Eder, and TV8. Thank you very, very much. You guys are amazing. Also thanks to everyone that have been supporting me on Ko-Fi, Kick, and to all of my YouTube members. You can support this channel live and grow with just $5 a month and gain access to many perks. This is less than a burrito. Check out my Patreon. Link is in the description below. And that's it for today, my dear Foxlings. See you guys in the next one. Bye bye.